What is going on, and welcome back to the third installment of the Jungle Diff Podcast with your first seed junglers going into playoffs. I am Llama, joined by MOSSIEE here from Hard Hat Zone and Goldfish Gaming. The two undefeated junglers coming back from the regular split going into playoffs here. So as most of y'all are getting ready to jump into matches this week, tomorrow and Thursday, I also want to just get a chance for our bye-week junglers, getting to pick our opponents to take a look at what is coming up for some hype matchups going into playoffs. What are some things to keep an eye out for as well as with this patch 12.7 coming out tomorrow is going to be live for these Wednesday and Thursday changes. So see what might be coming down the road there. So there's going to be a lot of stuff we're going to try to get through today.
Right.
Marcy,
yeah.
Thanks for being here, man.
Oh man, I'm always happy to sit down and talk about stuff with the CCS. I've been doing a ton of CCS content recently. I think you saw the player profile I did on Snow Life. I have like 4 more of those interviews to go through. Tried to do one for every single team. Unfortunately, was unable to get to some teams, but I'm going to just be like dropping those throughout the week. So I'm excited to see what people have to say about them. And so excited to talk about playoffs.
Yeah, and is that all teams in playoffs too, right? That you're kind of highlighting some different players from different teams who are playing in playoffs.
Yeah, trying. So I was not able to get to TA Light. I was not able to get to Collective, and I believe PGO. Well, Puston just got interviewed by Brankles, so I couldn't do that one. But
Gotcha.
yeah, I have players from every single other team, other than like the second round. So I just tackled the first round, and then we'll see.
Yeah, well, there are some hype matchups going in. I feel like there are some clear favorites, even as you're going through kind of the CCS bracket channel. I like kind of going through and seeing, all right, who is people winning round 1, round 2. I know that, you and I get to decide who are going to play round 2 as well. So maybe we have some more insight to provide to that. But I am curious looking at some of these first round matchups. I know you definitely have the Thursday insight. I got more of the Wednesday insight. I do feel like I was kind of, I casted one Thursday game, so I saw like Team Death Run play, but you definitely have much more of a pulse on that. So do you want to start with Wednesday, just kind of go through a couple matchups, see what we're thinking about some of that?
Yeah.
And, our bracket looks actually
pretty
identical
similar, right?
Wednesday.
Yep.
And I don't know if you took any insight from me as you were putting that together. What was kind of some of your thought process coming together for those quarterfinal matches and semifinal pairings for Wednesday?
Yeah. I think some of it got influenced from what I saw, basically from, really, there was like that one game that has stuck with me. I think it was the week 8 game between Dorado and TA Light. And ever since that game, I looked at both of those teams and I just went, oh my God, like these teams are both awful. There's a little bit of time before playoffs. Things could change, knockout matches, like stuff happens. But basically, I don't expect either of those teams to make a deep run. I think Collective in some kind of world could maybe make an upset onto TA Light. But I don't have like any doubt in my mind that TA Knight is going to 3-0 Dorado. So that's kind of my read on that. And then obviously, you guys and DNX are pretty scary teams. I think you guys will definitely make it to the conference finals. I'd be surprised if you don't. And then, I expect the conference finals to kind of be like a rematch of your guys' week 9 match where, you guys just kind of bop them. And I mean, this time you guys have an even better roster. So I think it should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree. I feel like everything you were talking about, I think mentioned in is it Collective, right? That it was Crosspoint. I get the two confused, but for Collective, when you got Philly B and is it Flan as well? Those are like a couple players that definitely can step up for their team when it's needed. I know when we played them, we had our sub mid laner as well. Like I think he played against mid only as well when we played against them. So that was a series that we took to 3 games as well. I think we kind of did some trolling in that series. And then, but I think your read on the Dorado TA Knight, I feel like that it's an upset if Dorado takes a game, honestly.
Yep.
Which I think a lot of people in the CCS bracket are talking about. TA Knight and Light, I think we're both in agreement. Yeah, I think they're going to be the teams getting out. And then I would say the top 3 teams on Wednesday are Hard Hat Zone, us, DNX, and then TA Knight. I think TA Knight, after some of their rebuild mid-season, they've looked like kind of a really solid team going in. And I know you were talking about TA, you said Snow Life was your interview from TA Light recently, right? Was that the guy from that? Or is that from Knight?
Snow Life is TA Knight, yeah.
Is Knight?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, I know that, I mean, he had some confidence going into the matchup as well. And
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that's good. That's going to be the big series to watch. I don't think, with us being able to choose, if there is an upset round one, I'm expecting that, Hard Hat's probably going to choose the upset team, that being Collective or Toronto,
Right.
if that happens. So I'm highly expecting DNX to have to play against TNA. I think that's going to be the most hyped matchup to watch in semis next week.
Mhm.
But I mean, yeah, and I think we'll kind of see that conference final shakeout to week 9, and that was a good matchup. And you're right, I think our team's still getting better, and maybe we'll even play like a 6-man roster because each mid laner brings their own strengths, and it's also nice to have a sub mid laner like mid only who I've been playing with for a long time, and I know how we play together, and it's also very different stylistically than playing with Marcel or Alternative. So.
Right.
Having that jungle mid synergy, I think, is something that we greatly benefit from and can play different styles. So want to keep teams on their toes, going through conference finals. But,
Mhm.
I think between ourselves, DNX, and TA Knight, those are the 3 teams to watch from playoffs from Wednesday for sure.
Mhm.
Thursday,
One thing.
go ahead.
Oh, yeah. One thing that I think is interesting to talk about is I think Collective. There's an argument to be made that Collective has been sandbagging throughout a lot of the regular season. If you look at their drafts and like look at the way that they played, like it doesn't feel like they were taking anything too seriously.
Hmm.
So maybe you know maybe they're hiding something in the back pocket, and like they could obviously show up. And I think if there was a team that for them to get through, it would definitely be like TA Light as a test of, can they step up to other teams? Because TA Light is definitely like in the middle of like between a good team and a not so good team like Dorado. So we'll have to see what happens with that one.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think looking at that, if there is kind of a dark horse or an underdog for the Wednesday division, I think you're absolutely right that is maybe the underdog story that could make it into semis at least, and yeah, I mean they're a team that if they've been sandbagging or I don't know who's kind of working the hardest these next couple of weeks, and yeah, I think we'll really see for Wednesday's game if they're pulling out some different strategies or what they can make happen for that. It'll be interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. So you wanted to move on to Thursday next,
Yeah,
right?
I was curious about Thursday because I feel like as I'm looking at these different teams, not only have I not seen a lot of them play, I don't have a good sense of clear standings. I feel like I'm seeing more
Yeah.
3-1s for both of us, even some 3-2s. What's kind of your sense on Thursday for these 4 quarterfinal teams where they're kind of at? I know it's 3rd versus 6th seed being, is that Odin, right, versus Sensei?
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
TDR and Horizon, right? So TDR and Horizon are 4-5? Or are they
Yes.
3-6?
Correct.
Okay.
No. Correct. You're
Okay.
right. So I'll give you the kind of information I have, the storylines I've noticed. PGO has had a really, really difficult season. Honestly, I don't really know how they snuck into 3rd place. It's 3rd place is not indicative of where their team should be. I think that honestly, they were almost kind of lucky to make playoffs.
Hmm.
They are not a stable team. They play like they. I mean, I'll try to mince words at least a little bit. I think that they draft in a very irregular and sometimes exciting way to watch. So
Sounds like Hard Hat Zone sometimes, though. I guess a little bit. I don't know. I feel like the drafts get a little off, but there's a difference of being unique and maybe being a little bit troll.
Yeah, I mean they have their jungler is like a plat 1 Warwick one trick named
Oh yeah,
PG
yeah.
Charizard.
I've seen him play.
And yeah, if you watched our series against them, you'll notice game 2, the dude just locked in his Warwick and like spent the better of like the first 5 minutes of the game. All his time he was just sitting in bushes. So maybe he's gotten better since then. I don't know. On the other hand, if you look at Sensei Squad, they're not a team that I have been super impressed by. I did get the chance to sit down with Aquatic Bear, the jungler for them,
Yeah.
and he actually seemed pretty calm and collected. I think he was kind of acknowledging that they were the underdogs in that series, and he seemed ready to take their best game to him.
Yeah.
I think on a good day, Sensei Squad could win that 3-2, and on a bad day, PGO could sweep it.
And it's funny because Aquatic Bear, that's a name that I knew. I think he played in Titan as well.
Mhm.
And so he's a guy that I know I've jungled against in the past. And I was kind of bummed. I saw his
Right.
name, I was excited because I know someone I jungled against. And I don't know what your experience was against him, but I feel like as a sixth place team, Aquatic Bear didn't feel like a sixth place jungler to me, at least. I remember, maybe it's just a name, and I know Brankles has saying Aquatic Bear's got one of the best names in CCS. So maybe there's a bias there too. But it's definitely a name that I know that I feel like can definitely stand up when it means to. Like, do you feel like there's a win con there for Sensei? Like, what's going to happen on a good day for Sensei squad? Or is it just, can you ban the Warwick and get a bush sitting platform
Yeah,
player?
I mean, so you can do that in the jungle matchup. I think jungle matchup is probably pretty favored to Sensei squad. They just need to capitalize off of Puff Zone, because this team just like randomly will decide to put Puff Zone on something that can very easily be camped, and he's just not a player that has a lot of game sense when it comes to avoiding jungle ganks. If you go back and watch our series, that's what I did. I just camped him over and over again. Game 2, they made the mistake of blocking action, and he just died on repeat the entire game. It was like really hard to watch. So that's definitely the weak point for them. What I will say about Aquatic Bear is that, and moreover for Sensei Squad, is that we played them, I think, on week 1 or week 2, and like they looked really bad. Well, okay, they looked pretty bad. I think that was our easiest game of the series, but that was a long time ago, so they could have improved, and they could have made a lot of changes. Their only claim to fame is that when Horizon was doing really well, they managed to 2-0 Horizon Gaming, which Horizon was like the other team that was competing with us earlier this season. But unfortunately, I think that 2-0 doesn't mean that much, because Horizon, like, that was kind of the beginning of Horizon falling apart.
Yeah.
And in that game 1, I believe they didn't have Gregorio, and then game 2, I guess everyone on the Horizon team was pretty tilted, and like I think it was just kind of Sensei Squad's day rather than indicative of who the better team was. So that's kind of my opinion on them.
It does feel like that kind of brings us to some of the Horizon, and that was a team that you just alluded to that might have had more internal issues than maybe what they're presenting. That sounds like they did kind of collapse toward the end of the season. That I think for a while they were looking kind of like a second place team for toward the top of the standings for a lot of weeks.
I mean, they took us to 3 games, and it could have been either one.
And that was one of only 2 games you dropped all season, right? Was to Horizon?
Yep.
Yeah. So, and then, on the other side of that matchup with Team Death Realm, that was a match that I casted as a color caster against Zeal. That, right, I think it was Zeal Blue. And that was a matchup that when I was watching,
I think it's Zeal White for us.
Zeal White. And that was a matchup that I think TDR took pretty handily, but it was, I think, more that Zeal White didn't really know how to play from behind, and so Team Death Realm just kind of walked over them. But I didn't feel like either of those 2 teams impressed me. Maybe Team Death Realm has their top laner. I know Nemesis was playing a great Trundle game that he kind of 1v9'd in one of those games. But looking at that matchup there, like, what's kind of your read on the matchup? We both have a 3-1 going to Team Death Realm, but that was something that I kind of flip-flopped on too, because maybe Horizon can get back to form, but I don't know what Playoffs is going to do.
Yeah, so I talked to Bravo from Horizon. He seems to think that they're in the process of turning things around, which is great for them. I'm hoping to see them return back to form. TDR, gameplay-wise and individual skill-wise, did not impress me as much as Horizon did. Just during their series, I felt like Horizon played really, really well in games 1 and 2. Game 3 was just crazy, and I think both teams made a lot of mistakes in our series.
I do remember that series. That was a crazy one.
TDR, on the other hand, maybe it's just a matchup thing. I felt like they adjusted decently well, but like game 1, they kind of got lucky against us, and then like game 2, we were in control the whole time. Game 3, we smacked. So honestly, like, either of these teams could really take it. If Horizon is actually back to form, like they were when they played against us, then they could even end up 3-1ing it. So it's, again, I think the thing with the Thursday bracket that I'm going to say time and time again is that it's about who shows up on the correct day. Because I've seen a lot of different looks from these teams, and a lot of teams have a ton of stuff going on. I don't want to talk too much about any internal issues for Horizon. I think it was just just to shed some light on it ahead of the player profile I did in Bravo. What he said was that the reason they had to bring Gregorio out was more about him just being unable to be there than anything else. So it's not like a breaking point situation. I don't think there's a ton of toxicity and ego. They really just had to get in their jungle player adapt, which I think he name changed, but it's still the same player. They had to get him as much time as they could with the Raw as possible,
going into playoffs. So like that's when you really got to be getting the playtime in this. And you talked about like who's showing up, and I think for all these teams, like you're saying about Thursday and Wednesday too, these are the first best of fives for this entire tournament.
Right.
As a team, and I don't know if you have any difference, but like we typically scrim 3 blocks. Like we don't play a whole lot of 5-game sets, and the hope is that most of these won't be. But there's a chance of 5 games. So like, yeah, I don't know if you have insights, and I can share some too. But like, what does it mean going from a best of 3 into a best of 5? How does that change drafting? Maybe for your team, maybe for teams as a whole. What does it mean to show up? Like, I feel like a loss is less detrimental in a BO5, like versus a BO3. We're like, all right, we have to win or we're going to lose the entire series. You can drop a game and be like, oh, well, that draft didn't work. What are some thoughts that you have going into best of 5s for CCS and maybe with Goldfish in particular, or just for the, larger macro of CCS? Like, these are going to be some new kind of bracket forms, and we're going to see a lot of best of 5s in the next couple of weeks, but this is new.
Yeah, I think we're actually pretty excited to be here because I think drafting difference shows through in best of 5s, and that's been one of our strengths. We don't really have to change anything we're doing. We're more excited to see if other people start actually adapting to how we want to play. And I mean, people have tried, and they're going to get a lot of opportunities, to figure us out. Not too many, obviously, because we're already in the semifinals, but when we played against TDR, that was one of the promising things about them because it looked like they actually prepped a little bit, and it looks like they had a fairly they had at least a basic understanding of how drafting works. Sure. One thing I will say about best of 5s is that they were saying on the podcast the other day, the CC Zone, they were talking about how a clutch play could matter more in best of 5s, and they're kind of debating that a little bit. Or maybe that was just between me and my teammate. We were watching it, and he was kind of saying, well, it doesn't really matter if you lose one game, which reminded me of your point. But I do think that momentum in best of 5s is a really, really big deal. So if you lose a game to someone who just popped off and had a crazy performance, that can definitely, your mental could take a hit from that, and you can definitely people get in their own heads during best of 5s. So I'm sure we're going to see some of that, as playoff kicks off.
Yeah, and to add to your, I think what you're saying about the pick ban strategy over best of 5s, I feel like in a best of 3, if someone has a pop off performance on a game, you ban it game 2. Whether I think that happened with us when we played against Collective, where the Philly B had a great Akali game, and we said, all right, well, we're not going to give him Akali, and so. Okay, he showed he can be competent on this champion. It seemed to, kind of destroy us. All right, let's get rid of it. In a best of 5, you can say, wait, is he really that good on it? Or for other champs or other matchups, wait, did they just get ahead? Did we misplay the lane matchup? Did we misplay the jungle matchup? The timers, the objectives, whatever? And you see it in competitive more in best of 5s where you get the salty run back.
I was about to say, yeah, I hope we get some salty run
backs. Absolutely, where you're like, no, this comp works. We just misplayed it on this, this, and this. We can play the same comp again and actually be successful. That's something that best of 3s don't allow you to do, that I'm hoping in best of 5s we'll see a team maybe not make draft adaptations if they feel like they have a good read about the champion or the matchup or the team they're playing against going into a BO5, that you can say we can get away with playing the same champs or same kind of identity. I think that's going to be interesting to see if that comes up in best of 5s too.
Yeah, I think, playoffs is definitely when your versatility as a team starts to matter more. So, most people will, I'll say that, and they'll look to us because on this surface level, we look we look like a one mode team. But I think I'm pretty confident that actually in some more recent games, we've shown that we have the ability to play other stuff, and that we're not just as one-dimensional as people want to call us because they're angry that they keep losing to us.
Sure, absolutely. How do we lose to this one identity? Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's funny because I love when people stream their games because you get to go back and watch the VOD and see what they're saying. And in the draft, it's always the exact same thing. It's like, bro, their ADC player just plays Ziggs. He just plays just give him Ziggs. It doesn't matter. It's just Ziggs. And then they lose to it every time. Yeah. And then they're like, bro, he can only play Ziggs. And then we pick something else, and it's like, damn,
Yeah,
You know,
I mean, that happened even when the casters were playing the DNX series. It's like, man, Dragon Mooncake only plays Nautilus. We haven't seen anything else from
yep.
him. What else does he play? You know, or I know with your support in Thresh, it's the same kind of thing,
Mhm.
right? So like, it will be interesting to see, like, yeah, is it going to be a problem? Like, you know,
Yep.
and those different modes, you can play a completely different style, maybe even like cheese a win a little bit. Like in a best of 3, you kind of have to show what you're good at to win versus like, can you show more split push? Can you play a 1-3-1 comp? Like maybe there's some draft adaptation to say, let's try to catch people off a little bit and maybe sneak a win or two. Because if you can sneak
Especially with
one win,
invades, right?
yeah, absolutely. You can throw a game from that entire kind of invade too. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how early game metas maybe transform from that too.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to see. I mean, I don't want to reveal too much. Generally, as a team, we've kind of adopted a strict like we're not going to invade policy, and I think you can see that. You know, if anyone was sitting there and going to go watch all of our early games, to look at our
To prepare for the
map
level
placement,
1.
we 5 point like every fucking game, and because like every fucking team in this bracket just invades no matter what.
Yeah.
Like it's like a knee jerk. Like it's like, well, I saw pros do this, I'm just gonna invade.
Yeah.
And it's like if you just don't play into it and you play a stable early game, I think that's a much better place to be.
Sure.
You know, as a team rather than just like I don't know. Like last season, we did some invading, and like it feels so coin flippy. And
yeah,
you know,
you're gonna 50 every game, level 1. Like, all
yeah.
right, I don't know if you have 50 yet. That's funny. So to close out Thursday, I know we actually have the same conference semifinals kind of lining up, at least that, you know, thinking that if you would pick PGO if they win there, and Team Death Realm going against Shadow Z. Is Shadow Z Shadows?
I'm not sure. I would assume it's Shadows, but
Okay.
I think I've always said it's Shadow Z.
Okay, I'm not sure what it is either. The only place that we have different brackets is kind of what's going to happen in that Shadow Z, or Team Death Realm matchup. You know, I mean, either way, I think pretty confident with Goldfish winning with whatever team you play. You know, if it's an upset for Sensei, sounds like neither of those teams sound like they'd be too challenging. But looking at that,
kind of disrespected actually. You guys gave us a loss to Shadows.
Yeah.
It's like.
Yeah, you know, and again, I think that's
happen,
more just
bro.
not a. Yeah, I like the confidence with that too. Yeah, because I don't know that team very much at all. So to
that
know,
team was not what it was hyped up to be. We rolled in and 2-0'd those guys, and it was like,
all right,
one of our easiest
cool.
series. Yeah,
that's funny. I feel like DNX kind of did that with OK Infinite, and then they dropped a game to him. It's like, oh, wait a minute, okay, we got to respect these guys a little bit. But
right.
I mean, it sounds like you didn't have to in that series. I mean, regardless, it's looking like it's going to be our two teams going into grand finals. And that'll be, I think, an interesting matchup too. You know, I mean, I'm sure we'll be prepping for each other these next couple of weeks, you know, as we see the teams you're playing against, as well as seeing y'all play, right? We only get, I guess, 2 matchups, right? You know, in conference semifinals and finals. I think
it's been for people's brackets, it's been so funny to like scroll down, and every single bracket you see, it's just Goldfish, Hard Hat. And I mean, it makes sense. We're both undefeated, you know, so
it does.
No,
and it does kind of feel like there is some, you know, I don't say recency bias now, but like it is like, all right, these are the teams at the top of the table. Like if you're, you know, putting your money, if you're betting on the horse, you know, like,
I mean, I think I actually, you know, recency bias is real, like it does exist, but I tend to, you know, I said in my power rankings post, a super long one, I don't know if literally anyone on the planet read that, but it in my mind, I think weeks, you know, let's say like the second half of the season is so much more indicative of where teams are at than the first half. So record doesn't tell everything, but obviously an undefeated record speaks for itself.
Yeah.
So. You know,
and dropping a couple matches here. I know our team was the first team of the 3 of us between Yumi and DNX to drop any games at all, right? Like that was, and I think
we were kind of looking over at you guys.
Yeah, like hey, are these guys going to choke? Like, what's going on? And you know, Alternative played, I think, 4 different roles, including lock-in tournament for our team. Right. So like, you know, there was some shakeup with some of those losses, but someone made a quote or mentioned recently, I don't remember who it was, but saying HHZ actually has never dropped a game with our starting 5. Which was interesting. I didn't even know that. I mean, it makes sense, but that was something I thought was interesting. And I think for either of our teams, if either of us don't make grand finals, I think it's going to be an upset from one of these teams.
For sure.
If you had to put a Thursday, you know, and not saying to knock you guys out, but that's kind of be what it would. If there's a Thursday upset team to make grand finals, who do you think would be the dark horse that might take you guys out or might catch you for guard? And I can answer for Wednesday too.
If Horizon gets it together, I could see Horizon making it.
Hmm.
I feel bad because I'm good buddies with the people over at TDR.
Yeah.
Matt, he's, their mid laner. He's a great guy. We talk a lot, but I don't think TDR has what it takes to beat us at their, 100%. Because I think when they played us, they were playing maybe their best game.
Mhm.
In Horizon, I mean, you saw how close our series was. So if
Yeah.
Horizon gets it together, that would be the team that could beat us, I think.
Interesting. And I think from looking at Wednesday conference, I would say TA Knight.
Mhm.
As good as I think DNX was hyped to be, and I think we had a good matchup against them. They took a game off of us. I
Yep.
think that was more, I mean, maybe from their end too, they would
No,
say
you
it for their
guys,
losses, but
that was a total, like, my opinion on that series, that was like a total draft. The game where you guys lost, like, it was like, what the fuck
Mhm.
happened with the draft? And then
Yeah,
you see you guys like 20 minutes in, you guys are still playing it out, and like you guys almost won that game. Like
yeah,
you didn't look horrible. So I think for anyone who wanted to bet against you there, in terms of their bracket, it's just it's
yeah,
unfortunate for them because you
yeah.
guys are
So,
clearly.
it,
Yeah, I mean, you
but
guys just have so much individual skill, right? And I
mhm.
think that's the thing about the top teams is that you get yourself into a tough position and you can play out of it.
Yeah, but you can't just grief draft for a 5 game series and expect
Mhm.
to still take it. But I would say TA Knight's really the underdog. I've seen a lot of. I think that series is going to be a 5 gamer. I think TA Knight can take it. I know
Yeah,
from
I
your
agree.
interview that they're wanting to rematch us again. And again, in form, if we say with either TA Knight or Horizon in that grand finals, if either of them can take the conference win, I think that'll be a big upset for kind of for both of us. But those are some teams I think to kind of keep an eye out that might be coming down the road.
Definitely.
So yeah,
Uh, Speaking of you know, keep an eye out for stuff. I believe, I don't know if you want to kind of transition into
yeah,
talking about some of the MVP votes and stuff like
sure.
that, the All-Star votes, but those are kind of coming up. Obviously, I've been in the channel. I wasn't able to participate in the Wednesday vote, but
Mhm.
I want you to know I would have voted for you for MVP for jungler. um,
And there's a conversation we've had with HHZ about that. Like, what does MVP
mhm.
even mean, though?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting. What I will say is, like, last year, I remember I just kind of felt like people voted for like everyone on their team, and like it was, like the top teams are going to win because staff's going to vote for them. So I was
Mhm.
kind of frustrated about that last year. This year we have 2 voting rounds, so it kind of like weeds things out, and then there's like a second round where people can kind of vote on what's agreed upon.
Mhm.
Um, I was kind of interested to see. So most likely the MVP for Thursday. The team would be Panzora, you, Marcel, Alberic, and Snow Life,
Oh, for
which is
Wednesday?
interesting for Wednesday.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so that's what it's looking like right now. So you guys would all
Mhm.
make the first team, and then I believe the second team would consist of Elsa from Frozen, Shady Gecko, Philly B. Actually, very interesting on Philly B. I've thought about that, but uh, Big Boy, and then Dragon Mooncake. So honestly, I was a little I was a little surprised to see that Olveric made it as the ADC MVP, given that he's
Mhm.
not even playing ADC anymore. Kind of interesting. I think Dallas is a really good player too, and he was on there. But moreover, I kind of have a hot take. I don't think Panzora is the best top laner in your division. I
Yeah.
looking at especially like your guys' last series, that is if that is the best top laner in the league, you in the way that they play towards top lane, like yeah, he has his few champs and like yeah, he looked good when he was on Gangplank, but you take
Mhm.
those tools away and all of a sudden it's a lot easier to play against them.
Yeah, and I think to his credit, even in I mean, granted, I think he lost. I mean, he lost both the Nasus games.
Hmm.
However, lane wise, I think even to his credit, pre 15 in the Mordekaiser game. I mean, that's a winning lane for Mordekaiser. We did blind pick Nasus on
Hmm.
R3, so like he got to pick whatever he wanted into it. We took away his
That's what
GP,
I'm saying is like if
but
you get the counter pick and you're against Nasus, like
yeah,
you'd think he would be able to take over the game more. I just remember you guys at the Drake fight, and here comes this huge Mordekaiser like stomping up, and like you guys just kited it out and like played it well, and like all of a sudden like his game was just over.
yeah, and
Um,
and half of that thing is drafting too. I don't know if the Skarner was trying to just hide it or throw a series, or Shady Gecko's like, no,
yeah,
really,
it was.
Skarner's really good here. I wish he was on the podcast to be able to talk about that. I don't want to throw too much
Mhm.
shade at him, but like when you have Skarner and Mordekaiser, like 1300 gold for QSS now becomes so infinitely valuable that like
Yep.
it kind of mitigates both champions now, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, and what are you kind of going to do? That's why the Tristana pick R4 I think was really interesting for our team. We just had the disengaged tools that it felt like, yeah, Mordekaiser can't take over a game, and a NASA showing up to a team fight being way more valuable. I think does speak to those champions. And I think Panzora probably had a CS lead and a gold lead for most of those 3 lanes. But again, I think I ganked Bennett once the series, like I'm not a top focused
No, he played
player,
great.
So yeah.
I actually, if I had to vote for someone for the MVP, it would be also from Frozen, just because I saw that would be my vote, because I saw some of those games in which he took over and he just completely ran over those games and just looked like such a dominant top laner. Which, I mean, I think Wednesday has a lot of great top laners, and actually when I was talking to all these different people for my player profiles, a lot of people seem to have the consensus that you guys seem to, in general, have the better solo laners, whereas in general, not my words, Thursday has like the better jungle and better bot lane duos, which is interesting because I consider Snowlife and Olberic to be very, very strong bot lane duo. That's one that stands out to me. Obviously, I consider you and Shady Gecko to both be strong junglers, so kind of an interesting read there. I think that there might be some validity to that, but moreover, I think it's, my opinion is that like, you can't really generalize. Like, I think there are strong players on strong teams, and maybe there are more strong teams than Wednesday, and like that's just what it is. I mean, obviously, like Okami might, if I had to do a CCS wide vote, I would probably put Okami over alternative, at least now. But it's hard to tell because we haven't seen you guys. So
yeah,
that's the tricky part about that, and that's that's why it makes sense that there's inter divisional votes.
Sure. And it is nice that like everyone from all 10 teams kind of vote on it, because I think that kind of provides a little more depth to it as well. The one player that, as I'm looking at this, and maybe there's someone that you kind of think of as well, but the one player I think to really shout out that I don't see on this list at all even being mentioned is Tay Splash from, I don't even know what team he's on.
Is he he's not a Zeal player, is he?
I'd have to go back now.
Is he a Dorado player maybe? I'm trying to remember where I saw his name.
Splash. Let me see. I'm gonna find him right now. But he was a guy that I jungled against pretty early on. He plays for Yaoke Infinite actually.
Okay.
And
yeah, they were making a bit of a run near the end of the season.
They were making a run. They took a game off. I think they took a game off DNX. He was a guy that I felt like kind of went blow for blow with me. And I'm surprised that, I think because he's on Yaoke Infinite, maybe isn't as top of mind someone like Reedy. Reedy is a guy I also played against in Titan as well, so it's someone that I've known and played against. I know he like his Diana and has some of that. But I think Tay Splash is really underrated as a jungler. And I know it can be hard not being on a top team, like you talked about earlier, to kind of get that recognition.
Well, I think there's another component of that too, which is just that, when your lanes are going well, it's so easy. It's so much easier just to make plays everywhere. Yeah. And like, for your team, you guys have just very strong individual players. So I think at the end of the day, like, obviously you and I are going to be regarded as like these, crazy good junglers, and we're probably going to get voted for. But at the end of the day, if your whole team is great, then it's a lot easier just to play the game and do your job as a jungler.
Yeah, and it's way easier to play from ahead. I always say that about League of Legends as a game. It's way easier to be ahead and pushing tempo than trying to get creative when you're 5k gold behind or something. Yeah, and I think there's also the intangibles. I talked about that very, very early on in CCS when I first met the team, when I was on the podcast, and they said, do you think you're one of the best junglers? And I said, I mean, if you're talking about my hands, maybe some of these Zoomers got me, I feel like even at, 25 now that starting to, maybe my mechanics of someone like Gregorio might be able to, out micro me, but it's the shot calling, it's the, in-game leadership, those kind of pieces, the intangibles that you don't get to see when you're just watching a video, that I think can also, it's hard to vote on. How do you vote on that though? Unless you're like, wow, how is Llama always there? I guess that's kind of the only thing, and only other junglers or maybe laners see it when you get counter ganked. But I think as to name two, I do think HHZ, not to toot our own horn, we're the only team with a top team player in every role. I see DNX has top jungle.
Oh, you're talking about for Wednesday?
For Wednesday, yep.
Okay.
I don't know what Thursday looks like quite yet for that. But yeah. So also from Frozen is also Yaoke Infinite. So he was the only team to have a top 3 player who didn't make playoffs. But I think his Splash kind of got a little snub there. But
all interesting things to look at.
Yeah.
I do think Vier was also an interesting snub because I thought Vier played
Hmm.
really, really well in the series where you guys were playing them, right?
Hmm.
DNX. Like his Vex was just like crazy. Like he, completely turned, like made just huge
Yeah.
impact in both games I saw him on it. So
But I
not sure
do
why
think
you
it
guys
is
didn't take it away in game 2, but I
it was a
can't.
little bit of a feels like a two trick. The RE Vex felt like after that he took away the victor on B1 that game, but it did feel like I've seen Vier really capitalize on Vex and also really synergize well with a lot of Shady Gecko's junglers, the Nocturne, the Zac, stuff like that. But after those two champs, I think that kind of dropped off a little bit. Um, and I think in that series too, I think big credit to Exerdian. I think she played incredibly well in the series. The Maokai maybe less so. But at least in the first two games, we're scared of her Rakan, like that was a champ that we don't want to deal with that. But I do think,
Right.
Vier also got a lot of points too. So, I mean, sounds like is regarded, throughout as having that success, but I'll like to see what he can do in playoffs too for the team. Maybe there's another pick he's been working on. But 88% win rate on Vex and solo queues, kind of nasty.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. That's one of those champs that I think people just tend to underrate because maybe my mid laner is the culprit of this, where he won't really admit it, but like I know he doesn't think the champ is exciting enough. It's not really what he wants to play, and so like you see Okami with 1,000,000 Vladimir games and solo queue, and I like my coach just yells at him. He's like, "You need to play at least 5 Vex games this week. Like, get
Yeah.
it together." Like, it might not be the flashiest champ in the game, but it's definitely strong. Kind of. I mean, I guess you can't really say Ari is not flashy. She's pretty flashy, but
She's a more
just
safe pick too with,
strikes me as like these champs just kind of do their roles and like they're they're just staples in the meta right now.
yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be aware of timing here, but I am curious to look at some of the patch notes for 12.7. That's going to be the patch that I think all of CCS playoffs is going to be played on. I think specifically, you can look at all the other patch notes for it, but I'd be curious specifically in the jungle role, what kind of changes might be impactful.
Yep.
Does that seem like something we can look at, maybe go through a little bit?
Yeah, totally. We can pull it up.
So if you haven't seen yet, 12.7 just released today, the day we're recording here, 8 hours ago. So on the 12th, which means it'll be live tomorrow, I believe. So there's a couple changes in here that might be kind of interesting for CCS. So for 12.7, for the patch highlights, we see some of the nerfs to some champions in the jungle that have been getting a lot of play, both I think in solo, in CCS, as well as professional. Nerfs to Lee Sin, we can look at that. I think some champs that have fallen off a little bit. Gwen was a big jungle pick for a while as a flex pick. She's getting some buffs on 12.7. Karthus is getting jungle-specific buffs for 12.7. So is Lillia. And kind of a dark horse here, but Wukong as well might have some interesting ideas. So we can kind of run through that. Maybe we start with those nerfs to Lee Sin first.
Yep.
I mean, are you seeing anything? I'm seeing 5 damage off of his Sonic Wave, 5 damage off of his Resonating Strike, and then that's 10 damage on his max damage on it. Is this changing him very much?
I don't think it's crazy. What I will say is, like, I think the champ is like, any little bit will matter a little. Like it'll always add up, right?
Yeah.
He does take like the 2 base AD nerf. I'm not sure at the end of the day, like I haven't really done the numbers on how much this would affect his clears or anything like that.
Yeah, the extra 2 AD from his base stats.
Yeah, but I don't I mean, at the end of the day, this is not going to change like things at all. People will still play Lee Sin until he's like completely gutted, because he's just a champion with so much versatility.
Mm-hmm.
As a Lee Sin player myself, I'm not playing Lee Sin because he's top of the meta. I'm playing him because I think I'm sick at the game and I can like make it work, right?
Yeah.
I don't think his role will change too much. I mean, you see players even in like the LCS, like closers playing him right now, and I don't even think in that patch they're on that he's particularly strong. I just think that players are cracked to the champ, and he's I always tell my coach, like, he's just so versatile, so you can do a lot with that champ no matter what.
I agree. I think the only thing to keep an eye out is for 12.7, see what happens with his win rate. I think when I saw the Hecarim changes originally, his nerfs on 12.6, I was like, oh, these aren't going to do anything. It's a little bit of AD. It's a little bit of base damage. But we saw his win rate tank from it. Went from like 53 to like 45%. So
Right.
I would keep an eye on Lee. Again, as you're saying, I don't think you're not picking him for the raw damage. But if it affects his clear speed, if it affects his first scuttle and his first spawn timer,
I think it'll affect it a little bit. I think
yeah.
for Hecarim it's hard because Hecarim is like he spams his Q a lot more than
Yep.
Lee Sin does, right?
Oh,
That's
sure.
a big deal.
Absolutely. So
Yeah,
the first,
I actually think just to finish up on this, I think the base AD might be more impactful than anything else there because he doesn't sound like a lot, but Lee Sin's like a champ who literally like your entire kit is just autoing right when you're in the jungle clearing. So
yeah, and that's a lot of
significant.
auto attacks on one clear because you have to be
Yep.
spamming it through your spell rotation. So I'd like to see his win rate on 12-7, see what happens to it, because I'm expecting that it will have some impact on that.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to move on to?
I think Gwen is the first jungle buff alphabetically, at least.
Yeah, so jungle Gwen could come back. I think the needlework buff is kind of big. Obviously she's a champ where you kind of want to farm for 6. She does have she used to have fairly strong skirmishing, but you know, a lot of that got taken away. I honestly, I think Gwen's gonna be one of those champs where she just gets taken out of the role where she's intended to be in.
Sure.
So she was like intended to be a top laner, and the nerfs on her auto attack range in like the last patch were like really significant, and they kind of just make it impossible for her to play top lane right now. So she might just only be able to be a jungler, like maybe not. I think this patch she's still gonna be rough, but maybe in like if they buff her a little more, maybe we'll just start seeing her always in the jungle.
Mm-hmm. The only thing to name on Gwen would be her needlework cooldown going from 120 seconds at level 6 to 100 seconds. If you think about like rotations in the jungle, typically you're ganking after a clear rotation, right? So you're coming up, you're ganking,
Right.
You're using your ult for it. But your clear rotation is going to be 2 minutes and 15 seconds, right? So if I clear a camp, if I clear my raptors, 2 minutes and 15 seconds after it dies is when it's going to respawn. And it's a 2-minute cooldown. So if I use my ult for a gank, next time I'm pathing that same direction, I'll have it back up for a gank. So, you know, I like to think about what can you do in those 20 seconds? Is that making a difference for when you're using your needlework? You know, maybe you make a kill top, and then after a bot side rotation, you can make another gank mid before you get it. So I'll be curious to see if that needlework cooldown, if you can be using it on cooldown, because that's one of her main gank setups, is leading with needlework, being able to get the slows. But the decrease of 20 seconds seems significant, but are you really able to get it off for another timer in the jungle, I think is something to think about based on the gank timers that she has for that.
Yep. You want to move on to Karthus here?
Yeah, Karthus is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think he was in a fine spot ahead of time. Like going into, he was kind of picked in the jungle. He was an AP threat, but you're seeing his damage against monsters going up 10%. It was at 85 for his Q, and now it's up to 95. It is just for his Q, though. I do want to name that it's not for like his E as well.
Yep.
But the single target camps can get cleared a lot faster. You're already clearing the multi-camps pretty quickly with the E. So if that can give him that extra 10%, basically free 10% damage amp. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a little more than 10% because going from 85 to 95.
I mean, and he does rely a lot on it. Like that's his main ability. So.
Yeah, and that's his main clear tool as well. Yeah,
could be pretty significant. I don't know if we're gonna see Karthus in pro play anytime soon because it's hard to pick a jungler that's just gonna power farm to 6 like that. But I mean, has Mouse played it? Do you know for C9 Academy? I feel like it's the type of thing he would play.
I don't know if I've seen it in Academy. I haven't been keeping up with all their games, so potentially, but. I mean,
I feel like I maybe saw him on Karthus in at least one game, and
Yeah.
I believe they won. So it could end up, you know, like in some niche cases, we could see the Karthus being brought out.
And it is only for monsters, so it's not affecting his laning at all. We saw it a little bit that Berserker played it one game bot lane, but you're not really seeing it in any other roles very much. But yeah, it does feel like maybe it's just a jungle push. And I'd like to see it if with, you know, a first strike and level 11 Karthus does some damage to a team fight. So maybe we'll see maybe some more priority in the jungle as a flex pick.
Yep.
Man, Lillia, this might be the biggest jungle change.
Yeah, this one's pretty huge. Getting that passive healing increase as well as the W base damage increase. I mean, the W base damage is nice, but obviously the passive healing is like what people are really excited about.
Yeah.
They changed the AP ratio from 12% to plus 20%. Which is like, I mean, that's an 8% difference. That's really huge. I don't know the actual percent on that percent increase, like for what it would be, but I mean that's like a lot more effectiveness. That's basically like healing you almost as double what it was before, right?
Yeah, so. And to put it in comparison or in context, 20% AP on healing is I don't know what the base is, but 20% healing is what Cassiopeia's E is if she's landed her Q. So her Twin Fangs is 20% healing based on 20% AP ratio. So to put that in perspective, you're healing what Cassio does and I'll double check that as well.
Mhm.
But I'm pretty sure that it's 20% healing. So like that's a big
Yeah, it sounds pretty
increase.
bonkers. And I mean,
Hmm.
Lillia has been one of those champs that like is really hard to pick because generally you're just like farming for 6 and stuff. But if she gets this, maybe her early game's a little bit better, and all of a sudden she could really shake up the meta. I think champions, especially some of the meta ones like Volibear and Nocturne, really hate playing against Lillia because just how hard it can be to skirmish against that champ
Hmm.
sometimes. So I wouldn't be surprised if the meta completely changes when that drops.
Absolutely. And I did look on the Casio change as well. It scales from 12% to 20% over
Hmm.
levels 1 through 5.
Okay.
So you're getting that at level 5, which is what you max first on Cassiopeia anyways. But again, 20%, and that's not including the extra 12 to 140 per level, right? So you go up to 140 at level 18. So yeah, I'm expecting to see more priority on Lillia. I think it might even move it up a tier if you go back to our tier list video. I
Hmm.
think you'll see her quite a bit, especially now with Hecarim being dead. Her clear is great, her scaling, and maybe you'll see some different builds. I'm excited to see maybe a Rift Maker or something. I'll see what happens with a theory
Yeah.
crafting this first week of the patch. So it's
Yeah,
interesting.
some Bruiser Lillia, always fun to
Hmm.
watch. So moving on to Wukong. Wukong Jungle is something I was playing last season. I think I actually even played it in CCS. I was looking at an old VOD. Wouldn't recommend doing that, especially not this season. Don't do that, please. It's really bad. But I mean, these changes seem pretty significant, and obviously he's a fairly strong champ in the top lane. But I do think that just the ability to flex him, like if these changes do improve his jungle clear a lot, um, then that would be huge for teams. Just flexing in comp is always such a huge deal. And I mean, when you look at some of these changes, like CD reduction on the Q, that's massive. Being able to dash through terrain with the W is something that should have been implemented a long time ago, I think.
Yeah.
And then the bonus magic damage against monsters for the Nimbus Strike, that's going to be huge as well. You might even max that in jungle. I'm not sure. I'd have to play around with it. I mean, the Q CD is also obviously huge. So, you know, what
Yeah.
do you think about this?
Yeah, I'm with you. When I first heard those changes, I thought it was just more cheese, like you could like bait over walls and stuff.
Right.
But looking at the champion now, when we think about his gameplay and his identity, I think there is that potential for the jungle pick. Um, I mean, he is gated right now by some levels, by some gank pathing, but like I don't know. I'm looking right now at uh his trickster, his warrior trickster, his W invisibility. It's
Mhm.
1 second.
Yep.
And then you also have your Nimbus Strike, which gives you a range that is 625. So I'm thinking
Yep.
about like a top lane gank. If you're over the wall, you don't have the blast cone. If you can W, you get over that wall and then get into lane with a Nimbus Strike, like you have a gank potential that might not be able to be blocked. Like it's hard, you have to ward different areas. It almost feels like maybe some Zac wards because if you can sneak in, or you're already
Yep.
1 second into lane now with a W over
Especially
the
with like a red
wall.
buff or something, yeah.
Yeah, you get some
Easy
really
kills.
interesting gank paths that I think really do open that up to Wukong. And I think as you're mentioning, you're saying maybe playing around with the Emax, that might give you even more gank potential. You get up to 100% AP ratio on it too. Like, do you see some weird stuff coming out with like a hybrid, like Wits and Wukong? Like, I don't know what that might look like, but
I'd be here for it, man. I'd be
man,
here for it.
I think that's something to be keeping an eye out for. And, maybe if you're up 2-0 in a series, you can pull out a Wukong jungle, But on 12-7,
Yeah.
I think we'll see when that patch drops what that champ starts doing too. So those are some
Yeah.
things to keep an eye out for from the jungle meta moving into 12-7. A little bit, I guess, with the items, but nothing really to write home about.
Nothing too crazy. I will say if you guys want to like learn how to play Wukong jungle, if it sounds like fun, just like click on my OPGG, after this drops. Just look me up and I'm sure I'll be spamming it. I'm sure I'll figure out the technology. I'll probably
Yeah.
lose a little bit of LP, but I'm sure I'll be right back on that champ pretty soon.
Yeah, you just got a sandbag, right? Like that's what it is. That's the that's the
I mean, I'm
CCS sandbag, man.
I'm I'm plat too. I'm fine.
That's awesome. So I think it's kind of going to wrap us up for today.
Mhm.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time, Mossy, as always, man. This has just been such a fun time to talk with other
Yeah,
junglers in the
definitely.
league, and
It goes by too fast.
it does, man. I feel like we could have these conversations all the time for hours, And big shout out to the guests that we had on for his last couple episodes. Tazak, one of the coaches for Zeal, as well as Shady Gecko, jungler for DNX, for them joining us here as well. Before we kind of close out here, Any salutations, people to shout out, stuff going into playoffs? Final words from you, Mossy.
Uh, yeah, I guess I'm gonna shout out. This is more of a call out, but I want to shout out Puff Zone, for like when they lost to us in week 5, it was like a really brutal loss, and especially like on Puff Zone in particular. So I just think it's great to see him that like he made playoffs. Like it seems like he's got some of his confidence back. It's really cute to see, and it's fun to watch him like try to get his confidence back, and like he's in the trash talk channel talking about how they're gonna beat us somehow. So shout out to you, Puff Zone, for getting back up on your feet. I can't wait to put you in the dirt again when you guys you know maybe if you guys make it to us in the semifinals. Other than that, just shout out to my team. Shout out to our coach James, and shout out to Flay. Flay is goated.
Yeah, man. And for me, I am Llama, jungler for Hard Hat Zone. Yeah, shout out to the Hard Hat crew, our 6-man roster with mid only. Man, I think mid only got robbed from first team CCS. Let's get him up there with Marcel. Yeah, shout out to the rest of the BBB crew as well. I feel like we've kind of taken over and invaded HHZ. Yeah, shout out to the other guests we've had on. Keep an eye out for Hard Hat Zone making it all the way. Grand finals, man. MOSSIEE, it's going to be a heck of a series.
I'm looking forward to it.
The hope is to see you there, and if not, it's an upset. So, yeah, we'll find times to maybe get a chance to play before that, and yeah, we'll be watching each other go all the way through. So, I'll plan to see you in the finals.
Yeah, definitely. Good luck to you guys. Hopefully you guys can make it all the way through. I'd be really disappointed if we're playing anyone but you. So
likewise, man. What if for whatever crazy thing either of us don't make it, we'll just have to scrim each other again, and we'll pretend that that's the real finals instead.
Scrim like a best of 5. It would be exciting.
And we'll see if we can have it casted. I'm sure we can get Elsa from that on that as well.
Oh, 100%.
That'll be all over it.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thanks for the time. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.